Now, President Donald Trump has long criticized India's protectionist trade policies, targeting the country for its steep tariffs on U.S. goods. Now, Washington has slapped a 26% duty on imports from India. Many experts say that's a significant setback for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government when the two sides are negotiating a bilateral trade agreement. DW's Adil Bhat reports on the potential fallout.
Rajnikant Chandan has been exporting jewelry and diamond to the US for the past decade. But now he fears his booming business could take a major blow because of the high tariffs on Indian imports announced by President Donald Trump. The gems and jewelry industry is worth $30 billion a year, and the US is India's biggest foreign market.
The recent tariffs imposed by President Trump are going to be tough for our business. Right now, we want Prime Minister Modi to intervene and to ask Trump to reduce tariffs on India. If these tariffs remain unchanged, then we're going to have to turn to other countries. We'll start moving our businesses there, and we'll export to them.
At 26%, the tariffs were higher than expected. Exporters like Rajnikant say they will hit exports hard. But the US says there are reciprocal tariffs meant to fix trade imbalances with countries like India, which it says enjoys a massive trade surplus. Even the seemingly warm ties between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump were no protection. Trump has repeatedly complained about India's high tariffs.
India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left. He's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right.
Residents in the Indian capital, New Delhi, fear the impact on their economy.
Well, I think it's horrible because we live in a world of globalization. In this era, every country has so much interdependence in each other. So putting so much tariff will not only hit us, it can also hit USA.
India should retaliate, but actually it does not have the capacity and the capability right now to do it, because you can see America is acting like a bully right now. In this sense, what India can do is it can do a global partnership with the like-minded countries.
Indian government is downplaying the initial impact of the tariffs, but experts say that economic fallout is inevitable. While the world leaders promise to fight Donald Trump's tariffs, the Indian government is keeping silent with no immediate reaction on the issue. However, the opposition political parties in the country accuse the government of bowing down to Trump.
Economist Biswajit Dar represented India at the World Trade Organization. He says these tariffs pose a huge concern for India's export market.
Our economic growth will be affected because we are dependent on exports. In fact, our domestic economy is not doing very well. So we were actually looking to exports to provide some momentum to the domestic economy. And that is now going to be missing. Because what is going to happen now, that the global economy is going to get into a tailspin. There will be lesser markets to sell our products, and our exports are bound to suffer.
The fear of losing the important American market weighs heavily on Rajnikant's mind. But he says all he can do for now is to wait and see how much damage these tariffs do to his business.
Let's bring in Deepanshu Mohan, Professor of Economics and Dean of the Office of Interdisciplinary Studies at O.P. Jindal Global University in India. Welcome. Asian markets have been hit especially hard amid the fear of fallout from Trump's tariffs. How do you see the situation for India, which has been hit with a 26% tariff?
Yes, so it's thank you for having me here. Well, it's a tough moment. I mean, it's a turning point in the economic history of not just the globe, but I think for India as well. Tough times ahead. It is what could be defined as the demonetization movement for the US, which is in context to what is happening across the globe. Where I see for India, I think the caution needs to be more in terms of trying to renegotiate an effective terms of trade with the US, which over a period of time will definitely impact our agricultural goods market. which is more vulnerable to exogenous or external shocks. I anticipate, I think, to a certain extent, services to not be that heavily impacted in the short term. But what you're seeing is a lot of diversion of realigned trade policies. And this is where I think India would stand to suffer more, because you already see oil prices coming down, and the volatility in the market, whether it's the stock market or portfolio investment, has been making our domestic economy very vulnerable to external shocks. So India is at a time, at this point of time, macroeconomically much more vulnerable as it was maybe back in 2007 and 8. We were more resilient to exogenous external shocks then. But we have a situation now that a lot of our supply chains are dependent on imports from China, which is likely to be impacted massively as a result of their own trade arrangement with the US. And it is those diverging routes that will impact the Indian economy much more harder.
So with those vulnerabilities, will India be one of the countries going to U.S. President Donald Trump, offering a deal to try to seek tariff relief? And what kind of leverage does India have there?
I think not much. If you would look at what India can possibly offer, much of what India has done over the past, where it has a trade surplus with the US, is it has done well in service-led exports. And that's where a lot of economists have advised that India stands to benefit more in exports in context to maximizing our competitiveness in services. Manufacturing, our exposure has been limited, but there are areas which are making, or which would make, livelihoods vulnerable. I mean, dairy is a very good example, poultry for that matter. India exports a lot of rice. And these are all goods which you would see the demand of those from the Indian market changing as India would be forced to cut down on duties. There is also on genetically modified products like soya and others, an expectation for India to cut down on duties, which would allow these products to find easier access into the Indian market. And Indian farming community, or what you'd consider as the competitiveness of the domestic manufacturing scene, apart from agriculture, is very weak. And that makes them, or these areas, vulnerable. So yes, India would not retaliate, of course, but you would expect the renegotiated terms of trade to be more beneficial to the US terms vis-a-vis India. And I think that's where I would say we have much lesser leverage than that, as one would imagine the case to be.
Professor Dipanshu Mohan, thank you so much for speaking to us on DW.
Thank you.